Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for bearing with us there. My name is Natalie Rue and I am the Professional Certification Marketing Manager here at BCS. Today we'll be talking about Agile and Agile Scrum, looking at what real agnostic Agile working really is and how you can take advantage of it. I'm joined by Arie Van Bennekum, a subject matter expert in Agile. He's not only the Chief Examiner for the new BCS EXIN Agile Scrum portfolio of certificates, but he's also co-author of the Agile Manifesto. Just a bit of housekeeping to start with. This webinar will be recorded and available on the BCS website and YouTube channel from next week. You'll also receive a follow-up email after this webinar with a link to the recording. Please let me know if at any point you can't hear us by sending us a message in the text box on your screen. The webinar will last around 45 minutes with a Q&A session at the end. Depending on how many questions we get, the webinar may run slightly longer. So that you're all aware, all attendees are on mute for the duration of the webinar, but if you have any questions at any point, please use the question box at the bottom of your screen and we'll get to those questions at the end. So without further ado, let me pass you over to Arie.
Hey, Natalie, thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Okay. You're in a small group as far as I can see, but great you're here. So yeah, the topic of the webinar, it's sort of my passion, and I would like to take you on a little bit of a journey to see how we can get together, in my opinion, Agile working in the best way, whatever the best way is, right? And let me tell you a little bit of a history. On slide 2, you see the word saying amazing, and I don't know if the animation works well, but if you look at this slide that says amazing, what it means to me is that it's the fundament of why we do Agile. And I want to share with you how it started for me. For me, it was in I was on a waterfall project from late '93 to May '94. And what happened was that we were a project team of like 30 people, and we were doing a very, very standard waterfall project for a governmental organization in the Netherlands. And after 7 months working full time with these 25 to 30 people, the project was killed. And the funny situation was it was never restarted again. And that's odd, because it means that you have spend a couple of million on something that obviously nobody really needs, because the project was never started again. And it happened before, the complaints of clients that, we're working on something, I have a supplier or I have teams, and what we get is not what we asked for. It's absolutely not what we need, and it's always over time and over budget. So this is the mid-90s. Technology was, of course, like it is today, in a change. But if you look at it, the pace of technology innovation and change today is so much faster than it was at that. And we thought at that time it was fast, but now it's even faster. And what technology maybe did in the mid-90s or before was, it would change jobs of people, changing in how you do them. You could do them better, you could do them faster, you could leave things out because it was all automated. But now what technology does, it's not only because it's still on this side, right, where it improves jobs, but it's also on the side of business models that are totally disrupted, new business models that are introduced, gadget devices and solutions that are introduced and obsolete within 1, 2, 3 years. Coming back to where I started, you work 7 months or something, you deliver something obviously nobody ever needs. And now today, in the world of technology and such a fast pace of innovation and change in business models in every professional domain, it's time to realize that you cannot allow yourself anymore to be late. And if you go back to why are we late, there, of course, in the lower level, there are even more reasons for it. But if you see, the way we work together, why are we late? First of all, is because we don't communicate well. And there are funny pictures about what the client asked for and what the team is delivering. And we all know those kind of stories. But misunderstandings are causing a delay. Because if you have a misunderstanding, you do a delivery, and then the delivery is not good, you have to go back. And it's sort of a cha-cha-cha, you go up and down. The second one, and this was also the case in the last waterfall project that I did, was the level of redundancy. Half of the work I did there was already done before, and they just told me to do it again, copy pasting stuff into other templates. And if you look at, we're all smart people, right? We're well educated. And then the question is, okay, so why do we do it like this? Is there an other way where you can say, okay, if I do it like this, I'm making the most efficient use of my time I can. And the last one is, it's connected to the fact that we, what I say, to avoid bugs. It's with bugs the same. If you have a bug, what happens? You have to rework, you go again through test cycles. So you build in instantly delay. So you have to go into another way of working, because all those three, the misunderstanding, redundant work, and the bugs, those are the things that cause delay that we cannot allow ourselves anymore. 25 years ago, maybe not in all situations, but maybe sometimes. Today, the pace of innovation has facilitated globalization, competition from all over the globe. And if you define a solution and you're not fast, your solution might be obsolete, or you're bypassed by the competition. So it's very, very simple. Avoiding delay is what counts now more than ever. And then I'm not going to teach you an agile lesson, but if you look at those three elements of avoiding delay, what is it that you can do? So you bring another flow of process. A lot of people what I see is, and this is where the word for me also, the expression agnostic agile comes from. What you see is that people squeeze waterfall into agile. So we have mini waterfalls, or we do waterfall in sprints. And a lot of the situations that were causing the delay in the past are things that are still there. We still have documentation that is written and handed over remotely to people. We still have people that communicate solely via the digital network, and we don't go to meet people. And if you take if I talk the way I talk at the moment, what happens is that you have a situation where everybody makes his own interpretations, and interpretations are always wrong. Now, that's not the point, because if you're sitting at the table with someone and someone tells you something, you can check right away. Do you mean this? And is this okay? Would this be okay? You can check, double check all the time. And what you see is that those kind of things, the interpretation, if you do a remote and written, and this is what I still see in a lot of so-called agile environments, is that you build in those remote moments in the so-called agile environment, and you sustain the delay moments. And this is where you need to focus on avoiding delay. And I think the most important one to avoid delay on the way we work is on the side of the interaction. And for me, if we go to the next slide number 3, it says Agile is an interaction concept. And I do not deny the importance of technology in Agile working. If you work in the world of IT, and if you do every 2 or 3 weeks in sprints deliveries to operations, because that's what you're supposed to do, you're heavily relying on tools. You're relying on tools for supporting you in your agile way of working, and you're relying on tools that help you in doing jobs for you, like integration and deployment and testing, etc. However, those tools can also be used in a very traditional waterfall environment. So coming back, where is the first thing that you need to focus on? You need to focus on the interaction concept. And if you go, and I'll come back to this a little bit later, but if you look at when we wrote the Agile Manifesto in 2001, we were 17 men, and every one of us was working differently for his own reasons, with his own ambitions, and focusing on different sizes of groups. It means that you have supporting the interaction concept, various agile practices from various agile methods. And this is where the word agnostic comes in. Now, if you bring them together, I just say Agile is an interaction concept. This is where if you start on focusing on the interaction, moving away from remote and written communication and going into face-to-face communication. That's the moment where you can avoid delay and where you really can gain speed and make sure that you deliver value. And now I'm back to where I started. My last governmental project, I had no clue what I was delivering in terms of value. I was translating a functional design and a technical design. We didn't know any objectives. We had a template. We got a functional design, and the functional design had to translate it into a technical design in the template that we got. If you sit at the table together, you can bring your brains together, and not only you can get out, take out misunderstandings, and you can make sure that you don't do redundant work, but also you can together focus with your brain. Okay, how can we deliver the best value? And you can make together very fast with a very high level of quality at the table. You can make decisions that serve your client the most. Now, if we go to the next slide, what you will see is it says interaction with the right people, and I would like to elaborate a little bit on this. I see three sorts of interaction, and the first one is on the content, where you have people together and they look at the content and they say, okay, is this bringing the value that we are looking for? I had a client, he said, the number of service level agreement overruns has to go down by 80%. And I want you and a team to do this. So the people from his organization participating in those face-to-face moments, I call them the heartbeats, they were bringing in requirements. We could validate, do we understand what you say? And we would make prototypes. If you talk about co-creation and design thinking, that was the mid-90s. But also, if they bring up a requirement, you can instantly verify, is this something that you really need? You can quantify the value. Does it help to bring, if you bring in this story or this requirement, does it help to get to the overall value that our client is looking for? So you have those elements on the content. What is very important if you go into the content is that you have all stakeholders there. Because if I have a review session and I only look with people from the business and I don't have the people from, for example, marketing with me, what will happen is that at the end of your time box, it's a sprint or it's a project or it's an MVP, I don't care. After 2 weeks or after 4 months or after 8 months, then all of a sudden legal will check, because before you go live, legal has to approve. And after legal, marketing will check, because marketing has to approve. And you know what will happen if they see something for the first time? They will say no. So Agile is interaction with the right people, and you take those people, those other stakeholders that can accept or reject elements of the solution with you from the beginning, because they will help you to avoid the delay, and that's so important. So we have the content, the heartbeat, all stakeholders, not just people from the business, all stakeholders, people that are empowered, that can make decisions on the requirement level. Is this okay or not? Do we get to the value or not? The second element is on the progress. We know the dailies, we know the retros, and they are elementary to the success of what we do in Agile. And then we have where content and progress meet the estimations. We all know poker sessions. Now, if you go to the next slide, we have something else. If you look at the little guy, we know that what he needs is an apple, but what he wants are the cookies. And this is where the value thinking comes in. So in those heartbeat sessions, you have to be together. And this is where you can see how important it is to have this face-to-face interaction, because people will put a requirement on the table. And if you ask them, do you need this? The answer is always yes. But if you drill down in the heartbeat a bit and you quantify the value, very often it's not as important as people think. And I've been in situations where people gave me absolute 100% guarantee it was a must-have and they couldn't do without. And it turned out that the contribution to the value was not even 1 promille, not even 1/10%. Right? So you can see that emotions are playing a role, and those heartbeat sessions help you to create focus because you stay on the objective side. Now, if you go to the next one, it's the redundancy. And I want to share with you a story. I was one moment in time, I was doing a transformation. I agreed with my client on how to do the delivery at the end of a transformation sprint. So you have all your visuals for visual management on the wall. And what I noticed is that we have a couple of people after the demo, let's call it the demo, right? Go sit down, and they were writing a report every sprint, and I checked in. And although all the information about the progress was in the demo presented, on the wall present, they were still, sort of squeezing the information into a Word document, right? So people do redundant work. It's in our system, because if other people tell us to do things, very often we do them and we don't think about the value. The last one in this list is, where do you get it? Now, for me, I always say, if you go into agile working, you get the success with the quality that you apply using the agile rituals, quality and discipline. And with quality and discipline, I mean that discipline is something you do your daily every day, because if not, you find out too late one of your team members has an impediment. You do your retro, you do it every sprint, you do your heartbeat every 2 to 3 days, otherwise the rework will be too much. So it's very important that you do them, but also that you do them well. And I meet people, teams of 4 people, and they start with a daily of 30 minutes, which is more like having a chat and talking about how was your evening yesterday, which is basically, from business perspective, wasting time. Right, so discipline and quality are essential. Now the next one is an animated slide, and it will show you it's a model that I made, and it's not complete. A model that I made based on when we met in Salt Lake City writing the Agile Manifesto, but also taking things in from later, but also taking things in from before. And what I know is that when we were in the room, we were explaining to each other, how do you work and why? And you can see people that were focusing on very small groups or individuals, and you had people focusing on teams and focusing on large groups. Myself, I worked most of the time with 20, 30 people. My largest one was 90 people. So I didn't have one team. So I was doing the cohesion and the dependencies between the teams all the time. So that was at the time called the Agile Project Management Framework, DSDM. I was focusing on value. So you can see that large groups and value, there's a lot in Agile PM that you can use. So Agile PM has practices. You can use those practices and they will give you benefits. If you say, like a client of mine said, Arie, I need a lot of efficiency because the efficiency will help me to save time. What saving time means is that I can do innovation. I'm a tech company, and the time that I save, I can do innovation. Innovation is my lifeline. Okay, then you bring in a lot of Scrum and Lean and Kanban. And on the quality side, another client of mine, he said, I have so much problems with my code that I get so many incidents in that my people don't get to the real new development work. And then you go into things like test-driven development and extreme programming. Now, this is my perception of the Agile concept. So on the left side of the slide, you see agnostic Agile, right? You have the agnostic agile.org, the website where you can go, you can visit. And for me, Agile is the umbrella. Agile is the concept. And in there we have the methodologies, and then in every methodology we have practices. And methodologies share practices. Some, the daily, for example. I think everyone has a day start, or a daily stand-up, or a daily scrum, or a daily achievement meeting, whatever you call it, right? So that's a practice. And if you go into working in an agile way, and you do your retrospective, and you have an issue to solve, an improvement to make, what you want to do is be able to grasp, to cherry pick from those methodologies, the practices that help you the most. So sticking to one method is not without a risk, right? So you need to be prepared. It's not going to be always the same. You need to be prepared. This is for me also why being an agile coach is not an easy job, because being an agile coach means that you're very knowledgeable in this umbrella, so to speak. Now, if you just do a recap of what I just said, okay, the major importance on agile is in the interaction concept, because this is where the things are really different from traditional ways of working and managing. When I was doing my projects in the beginning, they were not easy. I noticed, because people were struggling. Okay, how do we do this? but we got it done, in time, in budget, happy clients, especially with the outcome really helping them, giving them value. But I noticed that every time I wanted to do a project like this, what would happen is that I had to fight to work in this way again, because everybody was trying over and over again to push me back into the old ways of working. And I was surprised because most of the projects would fail. These were successful projects, and still people were not open to repeating that way of working. Some people said it's too complex, knowing that it's in essence very simple. And I struggled in the early years a bit. Okay, how in the world is this working, that people see the success and don't take it? What they don't adopt, the fundament for the success. And then you go to the next slide, and then you have things like paradigms. And a paradigm is a belief, and a paradigm shift is the most complex thing that you can do. This is why agile transformations are not easy. Agile working is not that difficult. This is why we see new companies doing it very easy. They work and they are successful. But changing the habits of 2,500 people is very difficult. People might say, this is not our culture. And then I always say, culture is like an empty bucket, and it's filled up with people and their habits. That's the good news, because people can change if they want to. But those paradigms that you see on screen are difficult to overcome, and they are simple but difficult to overcome. And the one that I already gave about the reporting, people perceive documentation only when they see MS Word, and if it is on the wall of all of a sudden, it's not professional information, or it's no information at all. If you look at the way that we worked in the past in a silo, now you get into a T-shaped profile, and people don't say, I'm the analyst, I don't want to do testing anymore. All right, things happen, not so much in new organizations, but especially in old organizations. The worst thing that I always see in proof of paradigms is testing at the end. I think that easily 50 to 75% of the client environments where I come in for the first time, after the delivery of a sprint, they go to do a sort of a sprint for testing, or they have a sprint for test, and then they have a sprint for user acceptance. And this is the old school thinking, because if you do a test, you have an outcome, they throw you back, you have a delay. And that's what we don't want. Pity as it is. I want to give you two examples more. The first one in the next slide is a bucket. And I always say a team is like a bucket, and look at this, it's full. And if you throw something in, something will come out. And the one that always comes out with the team first is quality. And so many managers give the teams work, the teams are working, and all of a sudden they come in, they bring some extra work, and they expect the rest all to be ready at the agreed date. If you bring something in, you have to take something out, you have to deselect. The next one is stop starting, start finishing. It's on the bridge. It's a similar example. And this shows for me the discipline of limiting your work in progress, but also the role of managers in agile organizations. You don't push work in the teams. You facilitate the delivery process so the team can get to their optimum. You take away their impediments if they can't do it themselves. Putting an extra car on this bridge has never helped anyone, but it does help if you start bringing cars from the bridge, so that you can create a sustainable flow of work in your organization. That's what we're looking at. Now the question is, if you with those two examples, how do you shift a paradigm? And if you look at the model, what you see in front of you, you see the circle. I call it the wave, and that wave I want to talk about very briefly is based on a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift starts with, okay, we were doing it one way in the past, we're going to do it from now on in another way. And it's like, it's Friday, you leave the office and you were playing all football, green field, white lines, 2 goals with a net and a white ball. Monday morning you come in and we play hockey. And it's also a green field, white lines, and it's 2 goals with nets and a white ball. The game is different, the rules are different, the people do different things. But if you don't help your teams to understand the new rules, they will keep on playing football on a hockey field. right? So you have to do things different. And the first one, the synchronize, is this is where we bring in the new, let's say, rules of the game. This is how we do it. So we talk about the rituals that we have together and how we approach work, and introduce things like definition of done and etc. And you are, as a coach in this process, you have to be very strict, because people have no reference of this new way of working. So if something goes wrong, which is very obvious if you do something for the first time, they will grasp from their past, to find solutions, and you as a coach will have to help them to get forward, to innovate forward, to find solutions forward within agile values and principles. Now, once people get into the rules, the next step is, okay, how do you do this as a team? So in the next step, in the team will follow the coach, and the teams will work, and they will be very directive coached so they can really get a feeling of, if you have the rituals and the new rules of the game, and we go into combined delivery, how does it work? Now, if you do that again, so you're now in total, maybe 4 sprints down the line or more. The last one is, how do you get used to this yourself as an individual? You had your silo-based profile. You're going now into a T-shaped profile. What do you need? Where is your ambition? Okay, you were a tester. What is the next step? You want to be an analyst, or you want to be also a developer? What is the next skill, and the next skill, and the next skill that you? And this is what coaches go from, setting the rules of the game, helping people to understand. So there's training in there, then going into the teamwork, like a football team, working, training during the week. And then the last one is, okay, now we start playing the games, and you get individual feedback, so you can refine you can refine your own skills. So that's the transformation process that we are going through. A couple of things that I would like to say to you, right? So this is the transformation process, take it in mind. And what I noticed is that a lot of people, especially on the top of the companies that I meet, think agile, okay, we were working like this in the past, and we're going to work like that now. And agile, and here it comes, agile is like this. I saw this statement, the next slide. It's Winston Churchill, and a client of mine had this on the wall. And I don't know if I got the quote literally, but it said something like, perfection is not a state, perfection is an ambition. And to become perfect, you need to change a lot. So perfect people change a lot. And this is odd, because a lot of people try to keep everything the same. And if you keep everything the same, you cannot improve. You cannot get better. You cannot, deliver more for your company or for your client. So if you do it like this, you can say agile. The next slide, if you flip, I just replace the word perfect by agile, and I say agile is not a state. And that's very important. So as a coach, you bring in from, this is how I work, and this is what I have to do, the mindset to people, value thinking, how can I improve? Identifying that I can do things better is not a bad thing. That's awesome, because I just discovered the next better version. And that kind of thinking, that's, as a coach, you have to bring in. So if you show the positive outcomes of working agile, if you do this really, you have on one side a happy client. Value is coming on time. I had a client who asked me, he said, Arie, why should I do this? Because I'm the number one in my business. And it's a tech company. And I said, well, I think you should do this to stay the number one in your business. Because there will be always a smart someone somewhere that has a brilliant idea, and your organization has to be able to respond if that person is not in your company. And the value for the client is one, but then the value for the people in the process of making. There was a very nice video, if you like. It's on YouTube, and if you search the words Daniel Pink, RSA, you get a nice video, whiteboard with an arm and a marker. You hear the voiceover from Daniel Pink, and it's about human motivation. And he says, in the kind of jobs where people use their brain, what are, let's say, when you have an income that you're okay, you're safe, you're not in financial problems anymore. It's autonomy, mastery, purpose that motivates people. In an agile team, you have autonomy. You agreed on the requirements, what you do today to make the team succeed at the end of the sprint. It's up to you, and it's up to the team. If you have a problem, you decide how you solve it as a team. The mastery, every sprint a little bit improvement if you're doing it well. And the purpose, at the end of the sprint, you deliver the value and you make your client happy. And if everything is okay, you can see the value, you can see the improvement. So from that perspective, you know, on terms of outcome of what you see in the benefits from agile working, it's on the client side, and it's also on the people who actually do the delivery work. Maybe more on the detailed level, we save a lot of paper if we do things well, and also we can maximize and improve, you know, client environments, and to see a smile on people's face. But honestly, that was not really on top of mind when we wrote the manifesto. So the last slide that I want to share with you, and I really want to emphasize this. It says a corporate mindset, changing the way you think to fulfill your potential. In the past, you know, when people were working in companies, especially in the larger corporates, but also in the smaller ones, there was a career path for you. And you were told what the next step in your career would be. You would see a list of qualifications or competences and trainings you had to go. You were squeezed into a predefined role that you maybe even didn't like. At least I seen it happen, that people were forced to promote to a role they didn't want, they didn't like, fully or partially. If we are in an agile environment, what you do is, and this is why the HR department is so important in an agile transformation. If you're going into an agile environment and you have retrospectives and you have T-shaped people and they find their own improvements, their improvements will be in line with their team benefits and ambitions. And it means that people don't evolve and develop based on predefined profiles where corporates squeeze them into a predefined role, but they can develop and evolve based on their competencies, their ambitions, and create their own happiness. And that's an element we shouldn't forget. So from the perspective of what we promised when we announced this webinar, I walked through, okay, what agnostic working is, you know, take the practices from the different methods, be knowledgeable so that you know if there's something going on and you need an improvement, where to look for. You can see, okay, if I go to transformation, if I'm not so agile at the moment, or maybe not at all, you know, what are some elements to look at? There is a transformation framework. You can find more on integratedagile.com. And if you go into the transformation, you will see a lot of positive outcomes. First one on the client side, second one on people who achieve, you know, value and are happy with it, but also because as both the company and the individual, you benefit from the fact that us, the individuals, are evolving based on their own ambition and competencies. And that's what I would like to stop talking and offer you opportunities to ask questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Arie. That was really interesting. For more information about the new BCS EXIN Agile Scrum certificates, please go to www.bcs.org/Agile Certified. If you've got any questions, we'll hang around for a minute or two just to let you type those in, and Arie will answer as many as he can. So go ahead on your keyboard and type away any questions that you have.
In the meanwhile, I will, Natalie, tell a little bit about something that we developed. It's the Agile Coach Certificate that we developed with EXIN. We all know there are so many Agile coaches on the globe. If I walk into a pub, the first person I meet most likely is an Agile coach. And I think I'm not so much into certification myself. But the two things, you know, there's this whole jungle of people who call themselves agile coaches, and clients who pay a lot of money for agile coaches should have, you know, something to steer on. And second, what I really like is that the EXIN process is developed in such a way that if you participate as an agile coach to become a certified agile coach by EXIN, and BCS, what happens is that you in that day learn a lot because you're in a shared process with 5 other agile coaches, so you learn a lot from each other. So it's basically a training. At the end, you have to pass, and not everyone passes, of course, but it could be interesting and nice.
Yeah. We've got a question here from Sarah Jane. What are the most common challenges you see when implementing Agile in an organization?
There are quite a few that are repetitive. I'm really flying all over the globe, and I'm meeting a lot of the same stuff. But I would say 2: permafrost and paradigms. And the permafrost is when you're in teams working agile, very often this is where it starts. You have this moment where you want to do the teams in cohesion, and then you have to go across silos and you bump into the middle management. That's not always easy. If you're on the top of a company and you want to do an agile transformation in your company, you have to also go from the other side through this layer. Not always easy. I've literally heard people from the middlemen saying that they would stop it if they could, right? My point is that those people have a lot of knowledge about the company and the professional domain. So my aim is always to get to have the debate open with the middle management people and see if they can be leading in the transformation, because if they do that, they are absolutely awesome. So challenge and solution in one go. The other one is the paradigm. You know what paradigms do? Paradigms define reflexes under stress. What happens is that, if you go into agile working and you didn't do it before, everything you do for the first time is not perfect. If you were a successful football team and you're going to play hockey, you might be really okay with hockey after a while, but it takes a while because you didn't play hockey before. The rules of the games are different. The roles are different. It takes time to learn. And in this process, on one side, you do something for the first time and things sometimes go wrong. People seek solutions in their past instead of innovating forward. They seek solutions in the past. And the other one is that managers say, oh, the team is not working. Some managers after 2-4 weeks, 1 or 2 sprints, they expect miracles. And this is what you really have to manage. Maybe I can add a third one. What is the challenge is to have management understand that they have to role model agile working. If managers keep on pushing into teams in a traditional way, teams will give a traditional response. And I was actually yesterday, I was in Montenegro with a client sitting down at the table, and I said literally, there were of the management team 5 people at the table. I said the success is up to you, nobody else, because the role modeling is very important.
Definitely. That leads quite nicely onto my next question from Richard. Do you have any tips for getting senior stakeholders engaged?
Well, Richard, honestly, that's not an easy job. Why? Because people will say that they're very busy. Now, if your senior stakeholders are managers, what I always do is, before I go into transformation, I have a number of strong sessions with managers saying, hey, listen, what is your role? How should it work? What are the do's and don'ts if you want your people to work like this and deliver the value? Now, if you do that, either they themselves are stakeholders or people from their departments are stakeholders. And then you assemble teams, multidisciplinary teams, including their people, and they are so already prepared. So the most important one is you have to assemble teams with people. Everyone is there, and that you have created the platform for get them on board or the team and create a working agreement together. Because people are not used to this. So if you have this one person from the communication department or from the legal department checking out, the software bits that you make every sprint, they need to be empowered, but they also need to take the empowerment. And that's something that you have to work on, while you're defining the backlog. This is where you spend, if you're Scrum Master or whatever you want to call yourself, a Super Scrum Master or an Agile Project Manager or whatever, this is where you put in a lot of time. What helps if you have those, because the heartbeats are very small sessions, half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, you do them every 2 to 3 days. So let's say twice a week. after 2 sprints, people all of a sudden see the value, because they help that at the end of the sprint, you have built acceptance. You know, the most common mistake I see is that people make the demo at the end of the sprint an acceptance meeting. But the point with acceptance meeting is people might not accept. And then you have a delay, and you want to avoid delay. So what you do, you take those people from the business, all those stakeholders from the beginning in your sprint, and in those heartbeats, half an hour. And if people are reluctant, if managers are reluctant, I say, okay, you know, give me for 2 sprints, give me 4 weeks only, and give them then for me 1 hour every 2 days, which is not a lot. And then they can make sure that what they were doing in the past, you know, testing at the end, they are now doing in cycles during the sprint. It's less work and with a better outcome. That's the tip I can give you.
That's great. Okay, and then last question we'll take is from Tim. Is the best way to bring in Agile mindset to dive straight in, or to use frameworks that closer fit old ways first and move towards freer governance frameworks over time?
Honestly speaking, it's a difficult answer what I'm going to give. First of all, you're not from not agile to agile or something. I always say you have agile 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0. You keep on improving, right, in your company. The point is you have to focus on where you want to be. Don't give in, don't compromise. You can accept we're not there perfectly, but you know, just focus on a framework doesn't help you, because it's the underlying paradigm that makes a framework agile or not. And the underlying paradigm is a difficult one, and this is where you should focus on. That if people are in a daily, that they really feel at the end, okay, now this had value for me. And then if you're at the end of a sprint and you do a retrospective, and there's an outcome and an improvement that you bring into the next sprint, you do an improvement, and people can see the value of it. That's where you need to be, in my opinion. And I think that, of course, you can use frameworks. I am agnostic, so I use practices from all frameworks, because I know all elements in the umbrella that I show you need to be covered at one moment in time. But you know, on the mind a bit agile, no, you have to change things over time, and transformations take time, of course. But the point is, if you keep on accepting old ways, they will never go, and you never get agile, and that's what you want to be.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Arie. That was really, really fantastic, and some great questions there from everyone. I think we'll end the webinar there for today. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.